You can start.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon. It's February 23rd at 2 p.m. and this is the rescheduled February meeting of the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee, originally scheduled for a few weeks ago. First, I'm going to do the roll call, and let's see, who do we have? Elise Burns?
Here.
Bob Van Horn?
Here.
And unfortunately, Liz Lingo is also with us today. However, we do not seem to have a quorum. There were several other people who had were scheduled to be on, and that's why we set this date. But at the last minute, I guess we waited an extra 5 minutes to start. Actually, 6 minutes now. But hold on a minute. One of them's calling me. Let me answer this. Hello. Hello. Okay, apparently our fourth member is trying to sign on. She's saying that she's coming. So maybe I better hold it for a second because I just got a message that she's joining. Brant, do you see Andrea signing up?
I do not.
Okay, well, she says she's joining. If we're this close, I'd like to try to salvage it. Yeah, but we're 7 minutes into it. I was just getting ready to dismiss it for lack of a quorum. No, 2. Yeah, but yeah, if you sign in, we'll have a quorum and can start. But I was just getting ready to. That's fine. Okay. Okay, great. She is here. She thought it was 2:30. So we will be able to start. But as I said, I believe because we are, I'll go ahead and announce this, because we are missing one person who was going to give an update on the tree mapping, and also because I don't have some information on the Commemorative Tree Program, we probably will have a somewhat shorter meeting. But let's let our fourth member get on here and then we can get going.
Here.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. So sorry.
Let me continue with roll call. Andrea Hoffman.
Here.
Okay, we have 4 people. We have a quorum. We can get started. And let's see, I guess the first thing is the approval of the minutes from January 14th. So, and I know, Andrew, you had sent me a couple of comments about it, but I think whatever those discussions were on the Arbor Day, we just didn't talk about them at the last meeting. So that's why they weren't. We've talked about them since, but we did not talk about them in the meeting. And that's why they weren't there.
Okay.
So is there a motion to approve? Are there any other corrections to the minutes? And do you have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the January 2022 minutes.
Okay, and second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we've done that. We don't have any correspondence today that I know about. In terms of it, my update is actually going to be all about the tree ordinance meetings because we've now had 3 of them. So I don't know if any of you have watched any of them. We met first on February 1st, again on February 15th, and then the 3rd meeting was yesterday. And in all, it's been over 5 hours so far going over the draft tree ordinance that's been created. And so it's very hard to summarize 5 hours in a few minutes, but I think I'll take about 5 to try to summarize, where we are. But I'm pleased with the progress, if only because we are finally making progress. There are some undetermined, and there's still some issues that'll probably have to be decided, by the commissioners that were kind of left unresolved in the draft. But groups have been working on this ordinance for a decade. And so I'm hopeful that we'll actually get to a resolution on everything this time without putting it off for another decade. But we started, you may recall that the current ordinance in our code is in 2 parts. And Article 1 is on public trees, and Article 2 is the ordinance for private property. And they were written at drastically different, totally different times. They were, the first one was written in 1988 as a requirement for becoming a tree city. And the second article was written in 2006 when it became apparent that we needed to regulate trees on private property because we were losing so many. So part of the challenge has been in putting these together to update. There are issues that are coming up just because of the differences in the time they were written. But we started with Article 1, and that one was actually pretty easy. We went through that one in 2 meetings. The second meeting basically to talk about the changes that had been made in the first one. And so the going over those changes only took about an hour. And the main things that came out of that, and it's a short section, it's only about 3 pages. The main things that came out of that is we did add an urban forest plan to the code, that there will be such a document, and that it would be reviewed as to the status every year by the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. So that's a good, it'll be done by the city arborist, but reviewed every year by Parks and Shade Tree. And the 2 other big things that came out of it, and you may have seen this if you read the article in the paper, is the city is now going to care for all street trees. And for the life of the tree. The one thing that's unresolved is sidewalks, because that's a different part of the code. And the code does require property owners to maintain the sidewalks in front of their homes, but that's for everything, whether it gets damaged from a car running over it or for a tree or anything. There was talk about not having tree damage be charged back to the homeowners, but it's a different part of the code. So we're going to have to revisit that later. In the meantime, the city will take care of, pruning and maintenance and all of that for street trees, with one exception. And that is that it's a time exception, really. Some homeowners want to plant street trees at their own expense. In other words, they ask the city, can I plant a tree? The answer is yes, as long as it's the right kind or an approved kind. So for those people who want to plant, and I think Liz said there'd been, I don't know, maybe a half dozen. I don't know if that was all in 1 year or not, but there'd been that many recently. If someone plants a street tree at their own expense, they will enter into an agreement with the city to maintain it for the first 2 years of its life, to get it off to a good start. And then the city will take over and it'll become a city tree and they don't have to do it. So those are the things, those are really the major things that came out of the first article. Then before we got to the second article of private trees, there became an opportunity to reorganize the entire thing. As I said before, it's a little disjointed because it was written 20 years apart. So Glenn suggested, the city solicitor suggested moving the appeals section, which was, 4 or 5 pages in its own right, to a separate article at the end that would just be on appeals, because that's done in other parts of the code. Then as I was going through like the definitions, for example, to get ready to discuss Article 2, I realized that the definitions were sort of stuck there in the middle of the code, whereas normally you find them at the beginning of the entire code. In fact, so then I looked at other sections of our code. And sure enough, most of them have an Article 1 that is general principles. So it's, and in the context of the tree code, the findings, the purpose, the applicability, and the definitions are all things that really should be in kind of a general section. So I suggested moving them, and Glenn really liked the idea, so that's what we're doing. So as a result, the final code is going to be, instead of 2 articles, it'll be 4 articles, but many parts of the code, even the animal chapter has like 8 articles. So it's commonplace in the code to sort of divide these things up. And the real advantage to it is that the private, what will now be Article 3, the private property part, will be much shorter, and it'll have just the meat that people really want to see when they have a question about what they can do on their property with trees. And that was the goal all along, to make it easier to understand and easier to follow. So the reorganization actually helps that too. And we got about halfway through, and that's the most complicated article. So in the 2.5 hours yesterday, we only got about halfway through that article. We spent a long time on definitions because, there's just a lot of stuff. The difference between caliper and DBH, and the definition of a street tree versus a city tree located elsewhere, all that kind of stuff. But the few things that did come out substantially after doing that were, you may recall that we were having a hard time defining the types of trees that had to be the minimum of 3 density. And the way it's worded now was that the first one should be high canopy, the second high canopy or other native species, and the third any permitted species. But Liz had told us and then said at the meeting again yesterday that she thought that was confusing, that people wouldn't be able to understand it. And the way it worked out is it looks like we're just going to have a requirement for one canopy tree, and the other two would be selected from a list that Liz would have together, and it would have both natives and I guess permitted non-natives on it, and to make it easier for people to select other trees. But there is a requirement that one of them be a canopy tree, a high canopy tree, which we also have to define. That was another term that I don't think was in the definitions that we have to define. And then one of the other great things that came out of it is that commercial is going to be included. And while it is impractical in many areas for commercial to have trees, because while hotels have to have 50% lot coverage and therefore might have room, other construction can go 100%. There's no room. But the idea was that by having the requirement in there and then being able to do a fee in lieu of mitigation if they don't have room for a tree, that contributes to the city coffers to maintain trees elsewhere. And so it's a good thing to include. It means that they're taking part in the responsibility of providing for trees in the city. In other words, commercial shouldn't be let off the hook altogether just because the space is more limited. But this gives them an opportunity to fairly contribute to planting trees on city property. So I think that's going to go in there, and Liz talked a lot about. We talked about, should some kinds of commercial be exempted because we know they don't have room, and the bottom line was, we don't need to separate it out. We just have the requirement for, and I think it's for commercial. I think it's 2 trees on a lot, not 3, if that stays the same. But the idea would be those that can, great. Those that can't, then would pay into the tree preservation fund. And then the other issue that was a lot of time, and I'm not sure how it's going to be resolved. I don't think we resolved it yesterday, was whether or not the line tree should count, because it does not count toward density in the current code. It does not count in the Planning Commission's revision, but the Law Oversight Committee had it counting, except that the chair wrote a dissenting opinion that he didn't agree with that. So there were mostly people against it as opposed to for it. So I included in the draft that it would not be counted. And there was a lot of discussion about the fact that line trees are often large. Therefore, why wouldn't it count? Because it's a way to preserve it. On the other hand, I think what Liz told us, it made me kind of go back the other way, because we want to be able to preserve these big trees. And if big trees are on the line because they're further away from the house and can live better because they're further away from the house, and if they count, that becomes an incentive to save them. And while that's true, I think one of the things Liz told us is right now they don't count for you, but they also don't count against you if you take them out. So to me, the fact that it's a wash means that we don't need to change the equation, that they still shouldn't count.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Do they count for each side?
The way it was worded in the LOC's version is it would count a half for each property that they lined. And that's where the complications come in, because then if it comes out somebody's down a half, then what do they do?
Yeah.
And I think in practice, Liz has had very few issues with that. In other words, when line trees have come out, people have agreed it's no big deal. But there is certainly the possibility that it would create an imbalance or create a problem with somebody's density requirement. So I'm not sure where it's going. They may end up counting, or they may end up not counting. But we spent a lot of time talking about it. So, and that's basically my short update. And I'm very open to any questions. And the other thing in terms of timing, the next meeting won't be for probably about a month. These 3 were pretty close together, but the next one will be a while because there are other issues in the meantime, such as outdoor. We're going to have to spend some time on outdoor dining starting next week. So there'll be a bit of time in order to go in and make changes that we talked about yesterday and kind of get ready for the next. So we may talk about it again in our next meeting. And if you all have any, input, by all means, please speak up. So any questions about all that? Okay. Well, that's all I have for the update. And then
And I'm sorry, I wanted to unmute myself. Back on commercial.
Yeah.
Since we're adding commercial,
Mm-hmm.
are we talking about current commercial entities or new ones?
Well, I
Or
think, and
How are we
Liz-
going to assess that mitigation fee?
yeah, well, Liz can weigh in on this too, but I think commercial may already be there. And this is already there to a degree, but it was worded a little weirdly as to whether or not it was just commercial that had residents on it. I know that commercial properties that have a residence, like an apartment above residential,
Mhm.
do have the requirement because there's a residential. And those have gone before Parks and Shade Tree and have gotten excused and paid fees. But in general, any provision of the code that is new does not affect those before it passes. In other words, somebody would have to build on their lot, a commercial entity would have to build an addition or do some major construction on that in order to trigger the requirement. Otherwise, everybody's grandfathered if they didn't meet the requirement before.
Okay. Thanks for that, clarifying that.
I mean, that's for everything. Anything that's new, anybody's that's already not in compliance is grandfathered.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of, let me just have to look at the agenda here. Not sure how we want to do this in order. I'm actually tempted to skip ahead to the Arbor Day because of timing issues on that, and then come back to the tree tour, because going over the other things on old business, the tree mapping, Liza was coming to town to take pictures for the map, and because of weather, snow a couple of times on both the days she was supposed to do it, that did not happen. So we're gonna revisit that next month. And as I said before, I do not yet have an update on the commemorative tree funds. So we may want to get from Liz an update on Delaware Avenue, but why don't we start with Arbor Day first?
Well, for a variety of reasons, Arbor Day had to be moved from its usual spot the last Friday in April. First of all, we had, let's see, the 150th anniversary, I think it's 150, of the Forest Service of Delaware. And they have a week of, I guess, festivities planned in northern Delaware for that. So that week was out for them. And Liz has a wedding in her family, and it is in Florida. And so we wanted Liz there, of course. So anyway, we couldn't go the week before because it was school vacation, and the week after is going to work. So we're going to do May 6th is our new date for Arbor Day, and it is a Friday. So far, we've got the state coming back with their education person whom we love. I have lined up the school, and at this point in the year, only the 5th graders will be coming. So the good news in a way is we're only going to be doing Arbor Day once. Otherwise, I've also called, of course, my music people, and even Sturgis Dodge has made sure that she will be back in time to be with us. I spoke to Sturgis today and told her that I would say hello to all of you. So anyway, as far as plans go, Liz and I at one point had talked about, and it's a place I think that might be pretty good for this year, the new playground on Lake Girard, near Lake Girard, as a possible site. And it would be easy for the school. It is a good place for the kids. It would be also some wonderful pictures, I think. And it certainly would be celebrating a new park. So all in all, a great place. I do need to find out whether there is electricity and water there, but I'm hoping for both. So that right now is the site. We will have the Art League. Oh, I forgot about the Art League. The Art League is also lined up for May 6th. So all the players are in place for that, last week, the first week, last day of the school week. So it's Friday, May 6th. So I think we're in a position to go. I'd love to hear from Liz, I guess. Can I throw it over to you, Liz? Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
We don't have water or electric at the playground.
There. Okay, so we'd have to bring, all right, okay. Got it. Got it. I think we do have some portable things though, do we not? I'm pretty sure the city does. I know that Bonky does.
Portable, what?
Electricity.
So, some portable, I don't think he needs to plug. I don't know whether he has. I could be wrong. Now that I think about it, no, the first time he did need electricity. Nope, I'm wrong.
Is that a short enough walk for the kids? That's pretty far.
Yes, I did speak to the teacher and she said yes. It's only one grade, Liz, this year.
Yeah.
So she said yes. And of course, from there, it's an easy shot really to, if we decide we're going to have the kids plant their saplings, we can go into the park as we had planned, just one grade. So I know that there would be room there. And if we decide not to do that, send the kids home with their saplings, then we can just go right over to City Hall and do the art presentation.
Okay.
And would you be doing the art presentation in the lobby there, or where the paintings?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we've always done it. We actually, and this doesn't involve particularly everyone, but all of the grades K through 5 this year are participating in the poster contest. So we're going to have to do something which will be separate. I'll take care of that. We'll have to do a program over there as well with Ashley that day. But we have her for the day, so she's already, that's blocked out. So we're ready with that. That's not a problem.
Okay. Then in terms, first of all, Liz, do you have a tree for the park? I know that there was a question about the best types for that location.
Yeah, I don't recall talking about that as being a tree planting site, so I don't really have a specific location or species there. Because we're going to do small pockets of landscaping inside the fenced in area where where there's not like a bench or surfacing.
Right.
Those are tiny, and we're already pretty dense and tree cover, especially for a playground right there. So I'm not really sure.
Okay. Well, I guess, Liz, I thought this was I ran with this as as thinking that you were really proposing this, but do you want to go back?
It's possible I said that and forgot. So I just don't remember.
Okay. No worries whatsoever. So if it's not a good spot, let's just think again. You and I had talked, and I thought we decided no about Delaware Avenue. I mean, it's a big wide street and there's not much traffic there. So we had talked about Delaware Avenue. It's a whole lot less, I don't know, pretty in some ways.
Yeah, we've tended to go more into like the park.
Exactly.
Scenarios.
So I'm at your, all right, everybody, let's brainstorm. Do we have a little time to do that? Anyone?
Well, we do.
Sounds like we really need somewhere that has electric and water though. Like those are kind of non-negotiables.
Well, yes. I mean, water, as you know, we've never had water. So
well, a spigot that you can get close to.
Exactly.
I mean, there's quite a few of those yard hydrants around town.
Okay. All right. So I'm throwing this back at you, Liz. Let's think. Where should we go? Anybody else have any thoughts?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, part of the reason that the playground had come up, and I have to say, I thought it was a great idea, was twofold, but I may be wrong on both counts. One is, I guess I thought some new trees were going in there, because didn't you have to take out some that just hadn't done very well, Liz? They weren't in the playground. They were to the west of it a little bit.
No, we left all those in.
We
took out one Japanese black pine.
Right.
Still have to get the stump flush cut and ground.
But you weren't planning to replace it in that location, right?
No.
So you don't have any tree planting plans right there?
We had talked about doing like large scale ones, but Delaware Avenue kind of took that slot.
Okay. Well, so that's one thing. And the other thing is, even though it's a great location, theoretically, because of the kids being involved, it's a tot lot. And so the grade that it's going to be there is really kind of an older grade for that tot lot anyway. So the symbolism of the fifth graders in a tot lot, may actually not be as ideal as it sounds on the surface.
Yeah, right, because it's 2 to 5 and they'll be 9, 10 years old.
Yeah,
right? Fifth grade.
right. So that may open it back up for, okay, then pick something else if that one's not really relevant. But I take your point that Delaware Avenue is not exactly conducive to a bunch of kids gathering around.
Okay, here's another thought. Beside the Italian garden.
Your volume just went way down, Andrew. We can hardly hear you.
Beside the Italian garden.
Still, it's no better. Do you have something covering your microphone, maybe?
No. How about now?
Not much.
No.
Well, I did hear her say that something about Italian garden. So
Now I can't hear it all. Now you're completely muted. Let's see. It doesn't say you're muted there. Did you turn your volume all the way down when you were trying to turn it all the way up? Well, let's keep trying and we'll keep going. So,
well,
yeah, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, if nobody has any ideas, I can think some more about somewhere that might have electric nearby water and that we can plant one tree. I'll
Okay.
think about it. I'll come up with something.
Okay. I'm assuming it needs to have nearby water because what would you do anyway? I mean, what would you have done if we put it in the park? How do you water anything there?
Well, where in the, I mean, it depends. So if it's like, and see, this is where one tree becomes hard. Like for Delaware Avenue, we'll have a contractor water them.
Right.
I mean, they'll come in a big water truck with pumps and all that, and they'll be in and out. And in the park, if we were doing a bigger planting, I mean, I've planted trees in the park before with no water, and we've had the contractor water them. Or if it's near, we did some in Stokely, and there's a yard hydrant there. I just kept a hose, and the hose would stretch over to the trees.
Okay. Can I assume that any that go in are maintained by the contractor though, for the first what, year or the first 6 months or what?
1 to 2 years, just depending. I mean, if it's something like a one-off, like one tree, we might do it ourselves, depending.
Right. Okay. Well, so that's why it'll be important to find a place that has water nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, like the Arbor Day tree, last year, all the volunteers took care of it.
Right. Well, but I think that's what we're trying to avoid this time, only because it turned out to be, I mean, it was great that so many people were available and did that, but it also turned out to be a big hassle with the school.
Well, that's kind of a twofold thing. They were really far away from the water too.
Yeah, that was part
like
of it.
It's not that hard if you can get there in like with 100-foot hose. It's not that big a deal once every other week to go and fill it up.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. Well, I get. Well, the thing is though, the clock is ticking. We only have one meeting between now and May 6th, I guess we have two, March and April. That's right. But I guess so. Next month we're far enough along that if we just finalize the location next month, we'll be okay. Liz, you think, or what?
I mean, for me, I would just have to know a couple of weeks before we put the tree in. So I'm not really like, in terms of location, that's not really a problem. I think it's more of an issue regarding like the electric and water setup and getting the kids over there, wherever that may be, and what we're doing after with them is kind of the stuff that needs to be. And It sounds like Andrea has a pretty good handle on it, but I think that's the stuff that's more imperative.
Yeah. I was going to say something else about it. So then does that mean you already have a species on order, or that you only need a couple of weeks to order whatever you pick?
No, I don't need really much time at all to, I mean, say I picked it out today, I could call the nursery and go have somebody go and get it, like,
Okay, that's
you
fine.
know, the beginning of next week. So it's not a
Okay,
big,
great. So you don't need a lot of lead time.
no, I mean, as long as we're flexible in like the species, because availability is really bad right now this year.
That's what I thought in general, that it was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that some species are always available. Like, I don't know, like it's always easy to get something like a red maple, like, or a river birch. Everybody has them all the time.
Mhm.
So but like, I think it was it last year, and you guys wanted a white oak, I believe, and I had to call like 4 places before they had a white oak that would be like acceptable. So as common a tree as you think that is, it wasn't easy to find.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since it's Arbor Day, don't we want to have it be a canopy tree every year?
I mean, I don't think that's necessary. I mean,
Makes
Arbor
sense.
Day, like you go on and they have all the, you know, they'll have all kinds of recommended trees, red buds. They're more about the natives for sure, though.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, I don't know anything about the Forest Service, it being their anniversary, but it's actually the 150th anniversary of the holiday, the tree planting holiday of Arbor Day. So this will
Oh,
be,
is that what it is? Okay.
yeah, so it'll be
Yeah.
150 years. Now, Arbor Day Foundation, I believe, is only like 50 years old, but the actual holiday is going to be 150.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Yeah, that's why Ashley is tied up with other things, because they're doing like big celebration for the state urban forestry and forestry department.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I think it'd be nice if it works out that way to do a maple or to have an oak or a canopy tree, that we should for Arbor Day, just as a kind of a statement that that's important to us, I think. Plus, we're going to have to put more on city property than on private property anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess since so is there anything else about the logistics? I think Andrew's still having volume issues, it sounds like, but is there anything else about the logistics of Arbor Day? Because if not, this is a good segue into talking about the planning for that, just to get an update on the Delaware Avenue trees. But anything else about Arbor Day?
I can't think, I mean, I guess really the big thing is the spot, and then everything else is kind of coordinated enough on Andrea's end and that it'll fall into place.
Yeah, and when one of us will talk to either Andrew or I'll talk to Lynn Cohn about publicity for it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We always do.
And
that.
I forget what we've done in the past, but it can be similar. The only other thing is with like COVID, if there's any COVID restrictions in place, I'm not sure what the school itself is doing, but just for them to keep in mind, if we come into City Hall, as of right now, visitors are required to wear masks.
Okay. Yeah.
That could change, but just so and the kids may be wearing masks in school anyways, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I thought that was going away at the end of March, actually. I thought I'd read that.
I don't know. I haven't kept up with it, but
okay. But that's a good point. If City Hall, that even if they are not wearing them, that if we go to City Hall, that they will have to. Either that or the celebration, I guess, could be outside.
Yeah, or I mean, the rule for City Hall could be changed by that time.
Right, I think it might. So. It might. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to say. Okay. Great. Well, in terms of so for Delaware Avenue, what's happening there?
There's nothing to update. I'm gonna apply for, already had the meeting and everything, the pre-application meeting for the Community and Urban Forestry grant. It's $5,000, so it looks like we should get it. There's obviously no guarantee in life on anything, but there is a pretty good chance that we'll get $5,000 from them to aid in the planting of all the street trees. So then, coupled with the commemorative tree funds, we're doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Are the trees on order?
We're still figuring that out. It's been not good trying to get good quality trees, especially trees that will live, are small, small species, and that will live in an ocean front environment. So we're still working on it.
What's the projected planting time in terms of like late April, May, what?
Yeah, usually we want to do it I mean, keep in mind, I can't pay anybody until April 1st.
Right.
So the earliest that we'd be able to order anything would be April 1st.
Right, right.
So, it just depends on how much like they know this project is coming,
Mhm.
as well as State Road. They know they're both coming. So it depends on how much a backlog, how quickly they can get the material, and what other jobs they have on tap, and how quickly I can cajole them to do this one first in front of everybody else.
Right. So that means every year we run the risk that they could be planting in June or something.
Yeah, April 1st is for a landscaping point of view. April 1st is really bad start to a fiscal year, but it is what it is. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
pretty rough. But it's nothing new. I'm used to it. So
yeah.
we know, and that's why I like the fall. It's just a little bit easier to get things coordinated because then I don't have that deadline of the money that I run up against.
Right. Yeah. Well, but you're not gonna, is there a chance you would put off the Delaware tree planting till the fall? I'm not sure it matters to us.
Well, I'm going to say I'm pretty set on doing it in the spring, but if things don't line up correctly, yeah, that's always an option that we would push it to like the beginning of September. Like if it came down to like one of the two jobs can be done in an appropriate time, I would probably do State Road because we actually already received our money for that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's sitting somewhere with Bert where he knows where it is.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So, and you still can't, even though we have it, you can't use that either till April 1st.
Yeah, it wasn't budgeted, right? So it has to be in the budget.
Right. Okay. Well, keep us, I mean, I'm not sure. Does it matter to anybody else whether the Delaware ones are done in April or September? Okay. I mean, I just want to see it be an ideal time for planting and not run into a problem where they're going in July because that's all. I don't know whether it's Spassato or not. I was sort of assuming it was.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't worry too much about planting time frames as long as they get the appropriate water. That's the big thing. So, like for a street tree planting, that's even a little harder, right? Because you have limited root space and you're watering via bags versus irrigation.
Yeah, right.
You know, irrigation is better with that. We have seasonal irrigation adjustments. They just turn it up and, you know, starting mid in June, whenever the weather gets hot.
Okay. All right. Well, to be determined on that. So then the only other thing is going back to this tree tour and selecting trees in parks and on city property and, you know, where we go from here. And Andrew, do you still have a, yeah. Yeah, okay.
She could call. Why doesn't she call in on a phone?
Okay, she's looking at that.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me. Like for whatever reason, my computer's microphone goes out. You can just dial in that number that's in the meeting invite.
Yeah. Do you have the number that's in the meeting invite, Andrew? Yeah, okay. Well, if you do that, that's fine. I mean, the last time we talked about it, we certainly talked about not having, you know, limiting it to city trees for a variety of reasons. Liz had suggested the Stokely Park because there's so many there just in that one location. So it's a great place to start. But then there's also Grove Park and there's a number of them there. And so we just kind of have to decide which way to go on that, whether or not, if we're going to target Stokely Park first, then we'd pick the ones to be highlighted and write descriptions.
Who was the one that was kind of spearheading this? Who was doing that? I can't
Well,
remember.
I think Andrea was collecting the recommendations for which trees. But of course, I don't want to stick her with doing all the rest of it because she's already doing something with Arbor Day.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's already doing the work of 10 human beings with Arbor Day. So maybe we can give her a break and see it. And, Liza's doing the map. So maybe somebody else will want to, or a couple other people will want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing was to sort of narrow down which trees and then, divide it up from that.
I think the best way to pick the trees are probably just, if we had somebody that was interested in running the project, is just to go and walk around and look at them, right?
Okay.
I mean, if it's going to be a specific park, that's easy. If it's going to be kind of all over, that might be a little harder.
Yeah, and I'm of two minds about that, because in a, the example that gave me the idea was only a small number of trees. I think it was maybe half a dozen, but they weren't all in one place. They were spread apart over, a half mile or whatever. And so one side of me says, well, don't put it all in one place, because then people don't see the variety and they're not walking around as much. On the other hand, if we have so many, I mean, there's nothing says we can't have multiple tree tour maps also. And I'm kind of assuming that we will ultimately have it exactly that we'll have more than one tree tour. And so we could have one that's just in Stokely Park, or maybe it's Stokely Park plus something on Scarborough Avenue, because there's some in the median there. And then, so the second tour might be, Grove Park plus others in that area or something like that. That was my thinking on it. But what does everybody else think? I know, Bob, you had talked about the trees at Grove Park.
Yeah, I think it would be a nice idea to have a few spots picked out in the town, because that gives people a chance to walk between them. But I agree, we don't want them too far apart. We don't want all this, 20 trees scattered all over the entire perimeter of Rehoboth, the square mile.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sort of a mind like you. I think it would be nice to have a few areas, maybe limited to 3, something like that, and then the best trees. But I agree, we should probably start small. I'm also thinking, as opposed to jumping in right now or something, it would probably be better in a project, I think, to have a complement of people. We only have 4 of us here today.
Right.
To have, the full complement of the
right.
people.
Yeah, and I was actually considering
willing to help out too. And I know Andrea was taking this on, and I'm certainly, my idea was to work like with Andrea, since she was really spearheading this, and just help out as I could with that.
Right.
But I don't know how you folks want to do it, because Andrea does have a lot on her plate.
Right. And perhaps you'll have less on her plate after Arbor Day actually comes and goes. And so this could be a project for that time period. But I was actually thinking, I haven't talked to the mayor about this yet, but I was actually wondering if maybe we should increase the committee by 2. We try to have an odd number. That's why I said by 2, because now it's 7, and so I just thought about trying to get a couple more people, and that way we'd have more people to be involved. Elise, you're muted.
I'm happy to help with the group too. I mean, it's just a matter of, haven't been down there much this winter to walk around and look at trees.
Right. Yeah.
The
Well,
weather will
do
be
we
there.
want to start with Stokely just because we know there's a lot there, and and with the possibility of maybe adding. And part of the reason I thought about adding Scarborough is just that at least they can walk somewhere. In other words, they're not just looking at ones that are right in one place. It does involve a little bit of walking. And plus, if we highlighted a few on Scarborough, they'd probably then see the whole, that whole median area, which is kind of nice too.
You could also do them like kind of how Bob was talking, like say we did a couple of individual ones, you could have like links, right? So if you're gonna have it one at Stokely and one at Grove, you could have a walking path, however one would walk. We'd recommend they walk from Stokely to Grove, trees along the way, right? Kind of like
exactly.
Connector trees. So pointing out, the deodar cedar, or the big Zelkova, or the London plane tree, whatever it may be. Or the wonderfully invasive ailanthus trees by M&T Bank, which, that's education as well. So maybe we mention them. I don't know. But I think that's probably the way to go, is have like your key spots. And then if you want to connect them, you would pick trees along that pathway, or even if it's slightly out of the way.
Well, I mean, that's the question, is whether or not a walk from Stokely Park to Grove Park is too far, and that needs to be 2 tours, or can that be 1 tour?
I think it could be one. I think it could be 1 tour.
Okay.
And I do agree with Bob that we should include Grove Park.
Oh, I do too. I just wasn't sure whether we were talking about,
I
making
think that's too far.
Yeah.
Well,
and maybe people do it in, maybe people do it in sections. I mean, maybe they, don't do it all at one time.
It wouldn't be a hard walk either to go from Stokely, and then you would go past the Anna Hazard house, where that beautiful southern magnolia is, and then kind of down the road over to Lake Gerard. And
Yeah,
everybody,
Another
even
one.
though that's a less walked area of Lake Gerard, it's still really, you know, doesn't have the paved walkway down by the water, but it's still really beautiful there.
Yeah. Liz, I was also thinking about Lake Gerard. Surely there are some trees there we can highlight.
That might even be a better idea than taking it that way than going all the way to Grove. Maybe Grove is something added later at some time, but that's such a beautiful area by Lake Gerard. That might be really nice to highlight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about the park of Lake Gerard near the Italian Garden?
Well, that would be the closest spot. Yeah. So you would come
Yeah.
over. I think you would probably recommend they walk, I think, up like down Scarborough, then up Christian, because then you could see the southern magnolia. And then we have 3 really big, pretty crepe myrtles too. And I know we may laugh about the crepe myrtles, but people who visit here love them to death. I love crepe myrtles too, but
Yeah, me too.
another discussion. We won't dig into that. Then they would walk down, what is it? 2nd Street, right? I think
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's yeah.
Second.
Well, and then 2nd pops you right out to the Breakers Triangle where we just added all those trees.
Right.
Right.
So we could walk them down the sidewalk from the Breakers to the crosswalk between Breakers and Bad Hair Day. Those trees can be on the list. Cross the street by the Italian Garden, walk up to the staircase, then go down the staircase, kind of like right by the water there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's kind of neat. Yeah.
That sounded like I put a lot of thought into that, but I just came up with that right now.
But that's neat. Yeah, I think that makes for a nice tour. Okay.
Well, and it gets you in a few really distinct areas, like natural. Then you're walking by the historical spot. So it'd be nice to kind of point out the little Anna Hazard house. And then you're walking right down downtown Rehoboth, the commercial district, over to a hotel and back to another beautiful natural area.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, we could stop just at that section of Lake Gerard. Phase 2 or 3, we could go over to the main section of Lake Gerard, you know, with the actual walking path. And then you end up at the beach. So,
Right. Yeah.
and you can walk the boardwalk back. I mean, because that's how I think of these things, like people that live here, if they're going to do it. Like I think of my mom, she goes for walks all the time and she has her little routes and she might cut through the woods here and there, but she might follow something like that, right? She might, why not? I'll just, you know, I'll do what this map says today, something a little different, you know, besides just the tourists coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good starting point. Okay. Well, then what we need to do is identify the trees along the way, and what's the best way to do that, Liz?
At Stokely to go and look at to go and look at them.
Well, I guess to go and look at all of them along the way, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what we decide we want to be a part of it. Like, is this tree interesting enough? I mean, I'm just thinking starting in one section, there's a linden there. There's a big,
Yeah.
I can't remember, red oak or pin oak. There's a bald cypress. There's a catalpa. There's a hackberry. And like a hackberry isn't that exciting of a tree, but it is unique in its own right. There's a couple of different pines. There might be like a deciduous magnolia back there. There's a lot of variety in that park, maybe more than any other, because it has a combination of like natural area versus in the planted.
Yeah, and that's why we picked Stokely Park, because it had more variety there than any other, you know, one destination. Is it better to wait until some of these have come out in terms of, you know, picking the exact ones or starting to write the tour map? Do we need to wait for them to leaf out first?
No, I mean, I can ID them at any time. That's not an issue. And sometimes even if I'm in questions, you can use Google Maps and you'll have leaves on there, or look at the base to see what leaves or seeds are there. But most of those trees I'll know just from memory.
Right, well,
it just depends on if who's going to be selecting the trees final, and if they'll need to see them leafed out in order to decide if they want them on the tour.
Right. We could do a first pass now, and then before it's actually printed, assuming there's going to be something printed, make sure they're all in good shape, or sort of fine tune it from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know the condition. There's one I wouldn't put on there because it's not in fantastic condition. It's an interesting tree, but I still probably wouldn't put it on the list. Like I'll know that from that park. So
Okay.
it would just be a matter if you guys really feel you need to see it leafed out to decide if it's important enough. I mean, I don't know if that's important to you. If you can look and say, oh yeah, that's unique enough a species, or that's a large enough species, or whatever it may be. Because we also have to think of our audience. Like it's not going to be like Katie Downs walking around and looking at this and knowing all the tree species. Not to say she wouldn't, because I do that type of stuff still. So seeing something like a hackberry, to me, not that exciting. To somebody who's never heard of a hackberry, might be kind of interesting.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, do you want to give us a list at the next meeting that we can then use to for the ones that are going to be working on this to go around and look at them?
Like a list of
the specific trees, yeah.
Like a list of, there's a 20-inch linden here, like a 20-inch linden, a 10-inch this, blah blah blah. Okay,
yeah, and that way we'll, and if you're available to go around with, people from the committee that are going to be working on it, fine. If not, at least we'll have that as a starting point.
I mean, it needs to be mapped out like some. Yeah,
that too. I mean, I can get the city map and try to.
No, I'm just thinking.
This may be actually the map Liza's working on may work for both purposes. Two different uses, of course, but whatever map she comes up with as a base might work for this too. I just don't know.
I know Max. He'll probably come talk to me now if he's listening. But I know that can have I think it's like GPS based.
Yeah.
I know there's also like iTree. They have different applications, but I know in iTree too that you can like use your phone and GPS, like something that's accessible. Use your phone and GPS a tree location in there. So I'll have to, it's been a long time since I've looked at the rest of the suite there. So maybe I'll make a note to do that.
Okay. We'll just have to figure out what kind of map base we're going to use and whether or not we're going to have something printed out. I guess that's what I was thinking, both printed and on the website, but I was certainly thinking of having something printed at some point. Yeah.
I mean, it could just be the only thing with the printed that gets to be a problem is all the details of the trees. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that'd be the next step, is what information do we include about each one? I would think we'd want a couple of sentences as to its significant, what kind of tree it is and its significance to the city.
Yeah. Yeah, it really lends itself to being more like virtual.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we look at the list next time and think about, who's going to go out and try to narrow it down and try to get the route and the map and all that. Talk about that next time. Does it work? Okay. Well, in terms of first of all, are there any sort of general comments whether or not it's on any agenda topic or not before we talk about meeting dates? No. The next regular meeting would be March 11th. Are you all available then? And Friday, March 11th is the reg. And of course, that's not very long from now, which means it's a short period of time to put together the agenda. But I think I'm inclined to continue this talk about the tour with more detail about trying to finalize this route and the trees. And then to also, I'm not certain whether Liza will have an update on the mapping by then or not. I sent her back a message this morning and I said, if you don't have it for the March meeting, we'll do it in April. So I'm not sure on that one. And then I'm not sure what else. Are there any other topics? And I hope to have the commemorative tree update by then. Of course, I guess we'll have the final Arbor Day plan by then. Right? Okay. So moving forward, and I guess maybe I'll have another, I may not actually have, I probably won't have another tree ordinance update because we're not meeting again for at least a month. So, okay. Well, if there's not anything else, then we can end right on time at 2:59. Great. Okay. Thanks. Have a wonderful few weeks. Meeting's adjourned at exactly 3 o'clock.